Welcome back to Yang Daily. I'll be your host, Alex Cheney, bringing you all the Yang news you need to live your life right. We've got really big news to cover, and my eyes are already burning because I'm up far too late finishing this, so we're gonna jump right in. Quick shout out to our Tier 3 patrons, Peter Park, Shay Meehan, and Nathan Stankowski, as well as all our other patrons. You keep us all informed and engaged. If any of you out there want to join these advocates of humanity first and independent journalism, head on over to patreon.com/yangdaily. It would only take a couple of bucks a month from each listener to keep this podcast and community going and growing into the future. Now on to the news. First off, there's some new misinformation going around saying that the COVID vaccine companies misled everyone and the vaccines are not effective. That is false. As usual, it is the misinformation spreaders who are attempting to mislead the public by conflating technical information to trick the vast majority of humans who are not medical experts. I won't get into the details, but there's a fact-check article in the links if you need it. So, big news building off the warnings issued over Flynn's words last episode. Echoing my own fears, more than 100 scholars of democracy and growing have just issued a letter urging that the filibuster be suspended and the For the People Act, aka H.R. 1 or S1, be passed, warning directly that failure to do so may result in the collapse of democracy in America. It is important to note that the statement is signed by many world-renowned scholars who specialize in how democracies break down. They have studied how it happened to other countries, and they see it happening to us right now. Quote, "We wanted a strong statement from a wide range of scholars, including many who have studied democratic backsliding, to make it clear that democracy in America is genuinely under threat. The playbook that the Republican Party is executing at the state and national level is very much consistent with actions taken by illiberal, anti-democratic, anti-pluralistic parties in other democracies that have since slipped away from free and fair elections. Democracy rests on certain elemental institutional and normative conditions. Elections must be neutrally and fairly administrated. They must be free of manipulation. Every citizen who is qualified must have an equal right to vote, unhindered by obstruction. And when they lose elections, political parties and their candidates and supporters must be willing to accept defeat and acknowledge the legitimacy of the outcome. True electoral integrity demands a comprehensive set of national standards that ensure the sanctity and independence of election administration, guarantee that all voters can freely exercise their right to vote, prevent partisan gerrymandering from giving dominant parties in the states an unfair advantage in the process of drawing congressional districts, and regulate ethics and money in politics. Statutory changes in large key electoral battleground states are dangerously politicizing the process of electoral administration, with Republican-controlled legislatures giving themselves the power to override electoral outcomes on unproven allegations. Laws politicizing the administration and certification of elections could enable some state legislatures or partisan election officials to do what they failed to do in 2020, reverse the outcome of a free and fair election. These actions call into question whether the United States will remain a democracy. It is always far better for major democracy reforms to be bipartisan, to give change the broadest possible legitimacy. However, in the current hyperpolarized political context, such broad bipartisan support is sadly lacking. Just as it ultimately took federal voting laws to put an end to state-led voter suppression laws throughout the South, so federal law must once again ensure that American citizens' right to vote does not depend on which party or faction happens to be dominant. Our democracy is fundamentally at stake. History will judge what we do at this moment." End quote. Well, there's not much more to say that I haven't said a dozen times. This is not hyperbole. This is not sensationalism. This is real. Recognize the threat, take action, wake up everyone in your life to it, and take collective action by calling, writing, volunteering, and making crystal clear to your representatives, particularly in the Senate and particularly Manchin and Sinema, that the fate of America rests on the filibuster, and the vote of you and everyone you know will rest on their vote on that. Americans didn't declare independence, establish democracy, and use it to advance freedoms and rights just to get here and watch it all fall apart. Did we? We will be the ones who decide. You will decide. Moving on, Yang has released his policy plan for veterans. The New York Post claims that he is the first candidate to do so. It includes a slew of policies, the biggest of which are $3 million more for the Department of Veteran Services, 5% of city jobs and contracts reserved for vets, $2 million for legal services for vets in poverty, the creation of vet medical legal partnerships at public hospitals to integrate social, legal, and medical care, mentorships for vets starting businesses, a memorial at Battery Park, and active canvassing by city workers to connect vets with city services. It also includes pushing to legalize controlled substances that are used to treat PTSD and facilitate their use in therapeutic settings, and information sharing and cooperative study of effective mental health therapy utilizing cannabis and psilocybin, with MDMA also on the table. All of these drugs, despite being called party drugs by some in the media, have proven medicinal effects and are often far safer than alternative medicines. It's why Yang supported decriminalizing them in his presidential run, and it's why he supports them now. It's also why a lot of vets and others who rely on these drugs to relieve pain and trauma do not appreciate them being referred to as purely recreational. MAPS, or the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Study, is one good source of information on research into the medicinal properties of these drugs. The School of Medicine at Mount Sinai is another. Links to those and Yang's policy page for veterans can be found in the links in the podcast description. I'm sorry to say that the news program Rising is at an end. Crystal and Sauger have left the Hill for reasons unknown. They say that they are going independent. Each have podcasts and are planning something new. I will miss Rising. It was a quality, rational, bipartisan, non-establishment news program. We need more of those. I hope they put together something similar. The only other thing I've really found that compares was the early episodes of the Moving Forward podcast, which isn't to say it's completely changed, it just doesn't have the same two anchors all the time. The Trickle Up will be ramping up with more content and more talent to do their part in filling this void, so check out thetrickleup.com and their YouTube channel in the coming weeks for similar vibes with a humanity first leaning. And that'll do it for today's Yang Daily. Bookmark and share the vaccine fact check, Yang's drug policy, the Trickle Up, and the Democracy Statement. Flood Congress with calls, tweets, faxes, and letters using the ResistBot or Income Movement easy contacts below. If you need help, consult Humanity Forward, the Income Movement Aid Database, the Mission Asset Fund, or United Way, and don't forget to Yang Daily.